We continue today with the 28th chapter of Shmuel Aleph, one of my truly favorite chapters in the Tanakh. David is with the Philistines, feigning to be a Philistine, but really, of course, he is a member of Bnei Israel, and Shaul is doing his own thing, and Shaul is not chasing him anymore. And that's where chapter 28 begins. Vayhi bayamim hahem, vayikabsu plishtim machaneim latzava lilachem b'Yisrael, vayomer achi shel David, Yadoa teda ki iti tetzei b'machana ata v'anashecha. Philistines again, they get their forces, they go out to war against Israel. And Achish says to David, you know, of course, that you and your men must march out with my forces, right? You're on my side. Vayomer David el Achish, lachein ata teda et asher yaseh avodecha. Vayomer Achish el David, lachein shomer l'roshi asimcha kol hayamim. David said, right, you know that I'll do what you ask. I am no longer aligned with the Israelites, with the Jews. I am aligned with the Philistines. So if that's what I need to do, then that's, of course, what I will do. I'm your servant, your bodyguard for your entire life. Ushmuel mate, we're in verse 3. So we're going back a couple chapters earlier. We know that Shmuel died. He was eulogized, and he was buried in his city, in his hometown of Ramah, where he was born, where his mother Chana lived, back at the beginning of this book. And then we're told, and that's just as sort of an intro, because Shaul had forbidden, and he got rid of all of the ghosts and spirits and witches. So what it's saying is there's no way to communicate with God because Shmuel is not there, and there's no sort of magical other way to communicate with God. Philistines mustered all of their people to Shunem, and Saul gathered all his people at Gilboa, Hara Gilboa. Saul sees how many Philistine soldiers there are, and he is terrified. In the past, we had this word charada. It's like the word charedi, used about his troops when they were scared in the past, back when Shaul was strong. But here, Shaul is terrified. Shaul ba'Adonai v'lo anahu. Adonai gam b'chalamot, gam b'urim, gam b'nevieh. Shaul tries to ask a question of God, and of course we said there's no Shmuel. But there are other ways to try. He tries to dream. He tries to ask the Urim v'Tumim, right? From the priest. He tries to ask prophets, but God, not surprisingly, is not answering. Vayomer Shaul, we're in verse 7. Lavadav. Bikshuli eshet balat ovel chay eleha be'edrisha ba. Vayomru avadav elav hine eshet balot ov be'ein dor. So Saul says to his servants, his men, find me a witch. Find me Whoopi Goldberg ghost, is what he's sort of asking for, right? Somebody who can conjure up the dead so that I can go and figure out what I'm supposed to do, because I'm not getting an answer from God. And they find that there is a witch in Ein Dor, right? The Witch of Endor is called in English. Vayitchapes Shaul. Vayobash begadim achirim vaylechu shnei anashim imo vayavu Elisha laila vayomer kasami na li ba'ov v'ha'ali li et asher omar elayich. So what does Saul do? We were just told a few chapters ago that Saul got rid of all the idolatry, all of the witchcraft, all of the ways of communicating with God, not through a prophet, not through a Kohen. So of course he disguises himself, puts on different clothing. He just goes with two men. It's a secret mission, right? They're not going out together. They come to the woman at night, to the Witch of Endor, and they say, bring me up a ghost. Bring up for me somebody that I shall name for you. So he hasn't said who it is. The woman said to him, are you crazy? You know that Shaul has banned this type of witchcraft, this type of pulling up the spirits of the dead. You're trying to entrap me? You want me to get killed? I can't do that. Vayishavala Shaul ba'Adonai le'mor Chay Adonai im yikarech avon badavar hazeh. And Shaul, right? And this is obviously, there's the irony here. He swears by God that you will not get into any trouble. He didn't say, oh, by the way, I'm Shaul, don't worry about it. He just said, right? Don't. Nothing's going to happen to you. Vatomer Isha, et mi e'eleh lach vayomer et Shmuel ha'ali li. And the woman says, who shall I bring up for you? Which spirit of dead do you want to speak with? And he says, bring up the spirit of Samuel. Of course, Samuel with this complicated relationship with Shaul. Samuel doesn't want a king. At times it seems like he's doing things adverse to the king, but he kisses Shaul when he first learns from him, and he's mourning for him when God says, I've rejected Shaul to be king. So it's a complicated relationship, and Shaul doesn't know where he stands now that Shmuel is, of course, dead. Vatera haishat Shmuel, vatizak bekol gadol, vatomer ishal Shaul lemor lama rimitani viata Shaul. So the woman, again, the only image I have is Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost or whatever. She somehow conjures up the spirit of Shmuel, and Shmuel screams out, or excuse me, she shrieks loudly, and the woman says to Saul, why did you trick me? Why did you lie to me? You are Saul. Right? And she may be scared that it was, right? He was entrapping her in the process. Elimelech al tiri. He said, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything to you. Ki ma ra'it vatomer eshel Shaul Elohim ra'iti olim min haaretz. And he said, right, don't worry. And she said, and he said, what do you see? And she said, I see a divine being coming up from the earth, and that would be Shmuel, right? Shmuel ascended from the earth to the heavens. Vayomer la ma ta'aro. It hasn't been revealed to him yet. I told you what it is in verse 14. And Shaul said, what does he look like? Vatomer ish zakein olev uhu otem mi'il v'yeda Shaul ki Shmuel hu vayikod apayim arza vayishtach. And she says he was an old man and he was wrapped in a robe. And of course, many times we've come back to it over and over again. The robe, the mi'il, the cloak, the coat, the symbol of leadership. Again, going back to the beginning of the book, Chana gives Shmuel to Eli, but she always comes every year and gives him a new coat. And the coat that was torn from Shaul, first with Shmuel, when he says you are no longer to remain kings, there's going to be no dynasty. And later, just a couple of chapters ago, in the cave, when David will not kill Shaul, but he cuts off the corner of his coat, symbolizing that his leadership is gone. So Shaul realizes that this is Shmuel, the old man with the beard, and moreover, I think the robe, the coat, the cloak, and he bows down. Vayomer Shmuel Shaul, we're in verse 15. Lama here gaztani laha'alototi. So, right? Shmuel starts to Shaul, why are you bothering me? Why are you, like the word broigus, birogaze? Why are you bothering me? Why are you irritating me? What are you doing to me? Vayomer Shaul tsar li me'od. And Saul says, I'm in great trouble. Uflishtim nilchamim bi ve'elohim sar me'alai v'lo anani od gam bi'ad anviim gam b'chamalot ve'ekra'el lach lecha lo tieni ma'aseh. I'm in terrible trouble. The Philistines, they've mustered this gigantic army. And God has turned away from me. He doesn't answer me, not through prophets, not through dreams. So I didn't know what to do. I was desperate. And therefore I called to you. Vayomer Shmuel, v'lama tishaleni, v'adonai sar me'alecha, vayhi arech. Shmuel responds, why do you ask me? If God turned away from you, then God has become your adversary. God is against you. I've always been with God. You could call me up, but what am I supposed to do? And God did as he told me he would do, and as I communicated to you. He tore the kingship out of your hands. That was the part that was communicated by Shmuel to Shaul. The other part, of course, Shmuel knew, and Shaul suspected, but it was not told by Shmuel to Shaul that he gave the kingdom to your fellow, to David. And why? And this is all because of the battle with Amalek, when you were supposed to destroy all of Amalek, and you didn't. Further, the Lord will deliver Israelites with you into the hands of the Philistines. And tomorrow you and your sons will be with me, i.e., that is to say, I am dead and you will be dead. And God will deliver the Israelite forces into the hands of the Plishtim. Just take a second back. If we remember the first prophecy that Shmuel got all the way back, I think it was in chapter 2 or I think chapter Yeah, the end of chapter 2. He thinks Eli is calling him. He keeps running in. He says, yes, master, yes, master. And Eli says, no, 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 it's God speaking to you. And God then gives him a prophecy saying that Eli and his sons are going to die. The Mishkan is going to be destroyed. It's going to be devastation. It's very sad to think of an amazing leader of Bnei Yisrael who managed to lead Bnei Yisrael to tshuva, to repent, who's compared in ways to Aaron and Moshe, that both his first and his last prophecy are about destruction and doom to Bnei Yisrael. It's just a sad thing. I don't think that there's anything good. Okay, continuing in verse 20. Vayimaher Shaul vayipol melo komato artza vayira ma'od midivrei Shmuel gam koach lo hayavo ki lo achal lechem kol hayom v'chol halayla. And Shaul just sort of dropped down onto the ground. I don't know if he fainted or something. He was just terrified by what Shmuel said. He has no strength. He can't eat hadn't eaten anything day or night, right? He was so racked and anxious and worried. He didn't bother to eat. And now he's sort of laying on the ground, overwhelmed by his lack of food, his lack of nutrition, and the horrors that he's expecting to happen. And now something amazing happens. Vatavo ha'ishal Shaul, vatera ki nival ma'od, vatomer elav hinei Sham'a shivchatcha b'kolecha v'yasim nafshi b'chapi v'eshma devarecha asher dibarti ela. The woman goes up to him and she says, when she sees how on the floor, your handmaid listened to you. I took my life in my hands and I listened to your request and I brought up Shmuel. And because I listened to you and did risk my life, now please listen to me. V'asima lifanecha pat lechem ve'echol v'yihi v'cha koach ki telech b'derech. And she says to him, so please, I'm going to put some food in front of you. Eat some food, eat some bread, so you'll have some strength to continue on in your way. Vayima'en, but he refuses. Vayomer lo achal. He says, I'm not going to eat. Vayivseruvo avadav v'gam misha vayishma lekolam vayakam me'aretz vayeshev al hamita. And he refused to eat, but his servants and she were urging him to eat, and so he listens and he decides to eat. Sits up on the bed. Ulisha egel marbeik babayit v'tameher v'tizbachehu v'tikach kemach v'talash v'tofehu matzot. And the woman, right? She got a calf that she had in her barn, in her house, and she slaughters it. And she cooks it, and she gives him flour and matzot. Okay. And then we're told the last verse in the chapter, Vatagesh lifnei Shaul v'lifnei avadav vayochelu vayakumu vayalchu balaylahu. She set this before Shaul, and they ate, and then they were able to get up that same night and to go on their way. Now, why do I love this chapter? I love this chapter because it is a chapter about a witch. It's a chapter about somebody who in the Torah we're told needs to be killed. It's a chapter where we're told that that's what was done by Shaul, and rightfully so. But what happens in this chapter is the witch transforms into Avram Avinu. The witch transforms from being the sinner to all of a sudden being this hospitable host. She's not the one, right? It's not her fault that the doom is offered by Shmuel to Shaul, but she becomes this incredible host. She welcomes him. She feeds him. She tries to comfort him. She tells him he knows that things are not going to go well with him. But for this last brief moment, for this last supper that Shaul will have, it's done by this incredible moment with this complete transformation. And I think it really says a lot about, the average person in Israel. We can make mistakes. We can do things wrong, even so bad. I mean, this isn't Scarlet Letter or whatever, but this woman is a witch. She's somebody who calls up the dead, which is prohibited, it seems. But she manages to transform in this chapter. And it shows the power that all of us at moments in our lives, we can really transform and we can do things that are really wonderful. And that's why I just love, it's a simple chapter. It's not the most insightful thing that I have in my life, but I love this chapter because I love the transformation that happens where she goes from being terrified of Shaul worried she's going to be killed, to then keeping him alive, giving him some food, giving him some comfort, and then to give Shaul credit. He could have stayed on that floor. He could have refused to eat. He could have eaten and then walked outside and went into the forest and ran away. But to give him credit at this moment in his life where he's had a life with many difficulties, what does it say? He gets up once he has food and he leaves and he goes on his way. He's going to go to wage war. He's going to go to battle the Plishtim. He knows what's going to happen. But that doesn't mean it's going to stop him. He understands what his responsibility is, and he's going to go wage war against the Plishtim. And we can counter it. We can compare it to something earlier, about 10 chapters ago, 11 or 12 chapters ago, the battle against Goliath, where I pointed out that Goliath was the tallest of the Philistines, right, this giant, and he wants to go mano a mano. And who does he want to go mano a mano with? Presumably with Shaul. Because Shaul is the king, and because Shaul was the Abraham Lincoln. He was a head taller than everybody else, and Shaul refuses. Everybody refuses. And of course, that's when David shows up and says, God's with me. No problem. I got it. Here, Shaul doesn't hold back. Here, Shaul doesn't put the responsibility upon somebody else. Doesn't abrogate his throne, his kingship. He understands this is his last moments, but he's going to go. He's going to wage war, and he's going to do everything he can to lead Bnei Israel. And again, it all happens because of a woman who was a witch, who has been transformed into Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu, a person of incredible hospitality.